Marvel Studios was once so close to collapse, it had to sell off its iconic superheroes just to survive. This remarkable story reveals how a desperate comic book publisher turned itself into a global Hollywood powerhouse. It's an epic saga filled with financial turmoil, bold gambles on unknown heroes, crushing setbacks, and extraordinary triumphs. Together, we'll explore Marvel's astonishing rise from near bankruptcy in the late 1990s to the unprecedented creation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You'll learn about the pivotal leadership of visionary Kevin Feige, Disney's strategic rescue mission, the controversial firing and triumphant return of director James Gunn, and the gripping tug of war over Spider-Man's film rights. We'll also delve into fierce fan backlash, groundbreaking strides in diversity, and the uncertain future following the climactic events of Endgame. Join me as we uncover the incredible history of Marvel Studios, a real-life drama every bit as thrilling as its blockbuster films. There was darkness that loomed over Marvel in the mid-1990s. The once mighty house of ideas had fallen on desperate times. The comic book market crashed around 1993, sales plummeted by 70%, and Marvel found itself drowning in debt. By 1996, the unthinkable happened. Marvel filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, a move that stunned fans. The company that gave us Spider-Man and the X-Men was on its knees. Its stock, which traded at $35 a share just a few years prior, plunged to barely $2. Marvel was gasping for air, kept alive only by a frantic restructuring deal. In a last-ditch merger, Marvel joined forces with a toy company, Toy Biz, run by Ike Perlmutter and Avi Arad, who stepped in as would-be saviors. People watched anxiously as these behind-the-scenes figures took control, determined to revive Marvel's fortunes by any means necessary. Marvel's salvation plan was as radical as it was risky. Arad, now heading Marvel's fledgling film division, made a critical decision. Instead of merely licensing characters to other studios, which had been Marvel's strategy, they would begin producing their own movies. This was a bold pivot. Previously, Marvel had been content to sell off film rights to its popular heroes just to stay afloat. In the 90s, they auctioned their crown jewels. X-Men went to Fox, Spider-Man to Sony, essentially pawning the family silver to survive. Those deals did bring Marvel characters to the big screen, but at a painful cost. Marvel saw only a pittance of the massive success of films like Blade and Spider-Man. In fact, Marvel earned a mere $25,000 from the entire first Blade movie, and only $62 million from Spider-Man 1 and 2 combined, films that grossed over $3 billion globally. It was heartbreaking. Their heroes were lighting up cinemas worldwide, yet Marvel itself was almost bankrupt and barely reaping the rewards. Worse, some hastily licensed films, Daredevil, Elektra, The Punisher, flopped both critically and commercially, threatening to tarnish the Marvel brand. Things got a little out of our hands, Marvel's future president Kevin Feige admitted about that era. Marvel's fate seemed out of its hands, its heroes scattered across Hollywood, its future uncertain. In this climate of crisis, Marvel's leaders realized they had to seize back control of their destiny. Avi Arad and his executive team hatched an audacious plan. Marvel would finance its own movies and build an interconnected universe, leveraging characters it still owned. In 2005, Marvel scraped together a $525 million financing deal, using the film rights to characters like Captain America, Thor, and the Avengers as collateral. It was a do-or-die wager. If their movies failed, Marvel risked losing those characters to the loan backers, a scenario too dire to imagine. As a storyteller, I'm struck by the dramatic irony. To save their heroes, Marvel had to risk sacrificing them. It was as if the Avengers themselves were put on the line to ensure Marvel's survival. The stage was set for a comeback, but nothing was guaranteed. Marvel Studios, in its new independent form, chose an unlikely champion for its first outing, Iron Man. In the early 2000s, Iron Man was considered a second-tier hero, far from the household name of a Spider-Man or Batman. Even I, a devout Marvel reader, wondered if the world cared about Tony Stark. But Marvel had a point to prove. They poured their hopes and remaining resources into a 2008 film that many saw as a massive gamble. And gamble it was. They cast Robert Downey Jr., a brilliant actor with a troubled past, as Tony Stark, his first ever lead role in a big-budget blockbuster. Hiring Downey Jr. was a controversial move. Years of personal struggles had made him a risky bet in Hollywood. Marvel's new president of production, a young Kevin Feige, personally pushed for Downey despite studio skepticism. Feige later revealed that this first casting decision as Marvel Studios' chief could have turned into the biggest dumpster fire ever if it went wrong. I remember the chatter at the time. Are they crazy? People asked. But Feige and director Jon Favreau saw what few others did. Downey was Tony Stark. And if Iron Man was going to soar, it needed an actor who had tasted failure and redemption in real life, just as Tony had in the story. Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark in Iron Man, 2008, the film that launched the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Marvel's choice of the once troubled Downey was a daring risk that ultimately reinvented him as a superstar and set the tone for the entire MCU. I sat in a packed theater on opening night of Iron Man, heart pounding with equal parts excitement and anxiety. As the lights dimmed, I wondered, would this be Marvel's triumphant rebirth or its final stand? Then the film roared to life, a kinetic blend of humor, heart, and high-tech heroics. Downey's Tony Stark was witty, brash, and utterly captivating, a flawed genius forging a new destiny in red and gold armor. The energy was electric. To my relief and delight, Iron Man was a smash hit, both critically acclaimed and wildly popular. It delighted fans and critics alike with its refreshing tone and charismatic lead. In Tony Stark's journey from weapons manufacturer to selfless hero, we saw a meta-commentary on Marvel's own transformation. By the time the credits rolled, I felt a sense of triumph swelling in the audience around me. Marvel had pulled it off. They had taken a little-known hero and a high-risk lead actor and struck pure gold. And then came the moment that gave chills. A post-credits scene that only a handful of diehards even knew to wait for. On screen, Tony Stark is confronted in his dark living room by a mysterious man with an eye patch, Nick Fury, played by Samuel L. Jackson. "You think you're the only superhero in the world?" Fury asks, his presence crackling with significance. In that instant, my mind exploded with possibilities. Fury spoke of an Avengers Initiative, hinting that Tony Stark had become part of a bigger universe. It was an exhilarating Easter egg for fans and a bold statement of intent from Marvel Studios. Marvel was building something unprecedented, a shared cinematic universe where heroes could cross paths and storylines would interweave. It felt like the beginning of a new era, and it was. At the center of this emerging universe was a mastermind whose name casual moviegoers might not have known, but whose impact was undeniable: Kevin Feige. As a narrator and fellow creative, I admire the quiet revolution Feige led from behind the scenes. A lifelong Marvel fan himself, Feige had started humbly, as an intern and then a producer's assistant on early 2000 Marvel films. By 2007, on the eve of Iron Man's production, he was promoted to president of Marvel Studios. In essence, he became the architect of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, MCU. Feige had a vision that many industry folks scoffed at initially. He wanted to recreate the feeling of Marvel's comic book continuity on the big screen, to have separate superhero films that were connected, nurturing each character's solo arc while also building toward epic crossovers. From a vantage point, Feige's approach was a brilliant blend of planning and passion. He surrounded himself with a team often referred to as a brain trust of Marvel storytellers, and together they mapped out years of interconnected films. It was Feige's foresight that turned that surprise Nick Fury cameo into a full-blown plan for the Avengers. Over the next few years, the world watched with amazement as Marvel Studios rolled out a series of films introducing heroes one by one. The Incredible Hulk, 2008, Iron Man 2, 2010, Thor, 2011, and Captain America, the First Avenger, 2011. Each movie stood on its own, yet contained puzzle pieces of a larger narrative. A mysterious cosmic cube here, a sneaky post-credit encounter there. It was serialized storytelling on a blockbuster scale, something Hollywood had never quite seen. Logistically, it's a miracle that it's occurred, Robert Downey Jr. later said of the MCU's interconnected success, noting that there was a plan for that miracle. I felt that miracle unfolding in real time, film after film carefully laying tracks toward a promised destination. Feige's leadership was tested constantly. Marvel Studios wasn't operating with unlimited resources or clout in those early days. In fact, the studio was initially distributing its films through deals with Paramount and Universal. Skeptics predicted superhero fatigue long before it became a buzzword. Yet Feige remained meticulous and unwavering. He had a mantra I've heard him repeat in interviews: focus on the characters and the audience will follow. He believed in earning the big moments through patient build-up and respecting the fans' investment. As an aspiring filmmaker, I found this approach deeply inspiring. Here was a producer who put story and audience experience first, not just the opening weekend box office. Feige was also remarkably adept at course-correcting when needed, replacing directors, shuffling release dates, and even navigating internal power struggles, all to protect the overarching vision. By the time Marvel's Phase 1 of films culminated in 2012 with the Avengers, Feige's grand experiment had proven a triumph. The Avengers brought together Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Black Widow, and Hawkeye in a single explosive adventure, fulfilling the promise of that Nick Fury teaser years before. As I sat in a cheering theater watching these heroes stand assembled for the first time, I marveled at the narrative genius that made this moment possible. Kevin Feige's formula, a perfect cocktail of planning, risk-taking, and fan-centric storytelling, had changed Hollywood forever. Marvel's movies thrived on more than just interwoven scripts or big action scenes. They were powered by characters that audiences grew to love, and those characters came to life through some of the most inspired and improbable casting choices in modern film history. From my perspective as a film enthusiast, Marvel's casting was itself a dramatic saga of intuition and gamble. We've already seen how Robert Downey Jr.'s casting as Iron Man was a roll of the dice that paid off monumentally. But Marvel didn't stop there. Time and again, they bet on actors who either lacked superstar status or carried significant baggage. Each time, it seemed, the unorthodox choice turned into pop culture gold. Think of Chris Hemsworth, cast as Thor in 2011. When I first heard the news, I, like many, asked, who? Hemsworth was an Australian actor with only a soap opera and a brief Star Trek cameo under his belt. Entrusting a multi-million-dollar franchise to him was bold. Yet on screen, as the mighty Thor, Hemsworth exuded both godly power and endearing naivety, making the character instantly iconic. Then there's Chris Evans, now synonymous with Captain America's virtuous heart. Few realize that Evans initially turned down the role multiple times out of anxiety and fear of the spotlight. In a case of life-mirroring art, it took courage for Evans to don Cap's shield. And once he did, he became the moral compass of the MCU. Marvel's casting risk extended beyond the traditional heroic mold, too. They tapped quirky, often comedic actors and let them shine in dramatic ways. Mark Ruffalo, primarily known for indie dramas, replaced Edward Norton as Hulk and brought a gentle, relatable humanity to the Green Giant. Chris Pratt, who was the lovable goofball Andy on TV's Parks and Recreation, underwent a physical and professional transformation to lead 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy as the roguishly charming Star-Lord. I remember many scratching their heads at that casting announcement. Pratt was then far from a chiseled action hero, but Marvel saw the untapped potential. By the time Guardians hit screens, Pratt's Star-Lord was a new fan favorite, and his ragtag team of misfits, including a talking raccoon and a sentient tree, stole viewers' hearts. Marvel's willingness to defy casting conventions also meant bringing in legendary thespians to elevate their films. Veteran actors like Anthony Hopkins as Odin, Robert Redford in Captain America: Winter Soldier, and Glenn Close in Guardians lent gravitas and credibility to the comic book world. But crucially, Marvel never let star power outshine the character. Even big names were chosen because they fit the role, not just for marquee appeal. The result was an ensemble of heroes who felt authentic and well-matched, as if plucked from the comic panels. This ensemble-first philosophy really paid off in the Avengers. It wasn't just a crossover of characters, but a collision of charismatic portrayals that clicked. Seeing Downey Jr.'s snarky Tony Stark verbally spar with Evans's earnest Captain America, or Hemsworth's Thor clash, then bond with Ruffalo's Hulk, those interactions were pure cinematic joy. As a fan in the audience, I felt like I was watching a once-impossible dream unfold. Marvel had built a family of heroes, portrayed by actors who had become a family themselves. The chemistry was real, the banter natural, and the emotional connections deep. By trusting its gut on casting and prioritizing character truth over A-list status, Marvel Studios gave us superheroes who weren't just action figures, but people we cared about. That was a game changer. It's a lesson I carry into my own filmmaking. Cast for the soul of the character, even if it's a risky bet. It might just save your universe. Even as Marvel Studios wowed audiences and defied odds, a new chapter was looming that would propel this success to stratospheric levels. In 2009, in the midst of Marvel's Phase 1 films, a development occurred that initially met with both excitement and trepidation. The Walt Disney Company acquired Marvel Entertainment. The price tag, about $4 billion, turned heads. Disney, the home of Mickey Mouse and fairy tales, was buying Marvel, home of edgy superheroes and epic sagas. It felt like an odd pairing at first glance. Some fans worried Disney might soften Marvel's tone or interfere with the creative process. As someone emotionally invested in Marvel's newfound mojo, I admit I shared a bit of that uncertainty. Would our beloved superheroes be forced to sing duets with princesses now? Those fears proved unfounded. In reality, Disney's purchase of Marvel in 2009 became a launchpad for even greater success. Disney provided Marvel Studios with robust financial backing, vast marketing clout, and global distribution muscle. No longer would Marvel have to beg other studios to distribute its films or fret about financing each new project. Under Disney's wing, Marvel gained security and resources to expand its storytelling ambitions. Importantly, Disney's top brass were wise enough to recognize Marvel Studios was doing something right and largely left Kevin Feige and his team to their own devices creatively. In interviews, Feige often recounted how Disney's then CEO Bob Iger and studio chairman Alan Horn were supportive and hands-off when it came to Marvel's content, intervening only to provide support, not micromanage. From my vantage point, Disney's influence was most visible in the acceleration of Marvel's output and the broadening of its canvas. Marvel movies began to roll out more frequently, sometimes 2 to 3 films a year by the mid-2010s, and the production values and spectacle only grew grander with Disney's investment. The first big test of this partnership was The Avengers, 2012. It was the culmination of Marvel's Phase 1, and notably the first Marvel Studios film distributed by Walt Disney, after Disney negotiated with Paramount to take over. The result? A cultural phenomenon. The Avengers shattered box office records and became a moment of collective geek glee around the globe. I'll never forget sitting in that theater as the Avengers assembled in New York, the camera circling our 6 heroes, and the audience erupting in applause. It was a payoff not just of 4 years of careful storytelling, but also proof that Disney's support had supercharged Marvel's potential. The film's success proved that Marvel was now a cornerstone in Disney's empire, alongside Pixar, Star Wars, which Disney would acquire in 2012, and the classic Disney stable. One could almost sense Disney's execs smiling ear to ear as the Avengers merchandise flew off shelves, and the Marvel brand became a household name for families everywhere. Disney's acquisition also opened up new avenues, theme park attractions, bigger merchandising deals, and later, streaming platforms to showcase Marvel's heroes. Over the next few years, Marvel Studios rolled out Phase 2 and Phase 3 of its plan with confidence. With Disney's backing, films like Captain America, The Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Doctor Strange could take stylistic and narrative risks, knowing the distribution and marketing machine would ensure they found their audience. In 2015, when Avengers: Age of Ultron hit theaters, the MCU had become a sprawling narrative universe encompassing interwoven films and even TV tie-ins. By 2018, Marvel, under Disney, was releasing 3 blockbuster films in a single year: Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, each distinct yet part of a grand tapestry. As a storyteller, I was in awe. Marvel Studios had become a modern myth factory operating at peak confidence. Disney's bet paid off many times over. That initial $4 billion investment looked like a bargain in hindsight, with Marvel's films grossing far beyond that and creating an infinite feedback loop of content and revenue. And for us fans, we got to see our superheroes not only continue on the big screen, but flourish in new mediums and corners of pop culture. Marvel Studios was truly living up to its tagline, the home of our superheroes, now with the largest home imaginable. Even in a realm of superheroes, real-life drama can strike unexpectedly. One of the most emotional roller coasters witnessed as a Marvel fan and industry observer was the rise, fall, and rise again of director James Gunn. Gunn, an offbeat filmmaker with a wicked sense of humor, had become beloved for writing and directing Guardians of the Galaxy 2014 and its sequel in 2017. He took a little-known comic property about oddball space outlaws and injected it with so much heart, wit, and catchy 70s music that it became one of Marvel's most acclaimed and unique franchises. The Guardians, Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax, Rocket, and Groot were like Gunn's misfit children, and he their proud creator. By 2017, James Gunn was a celebrated member of the Marvel family, announced as the writer-director for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, 3, and even helping Marvel chart the cosmic side of its universe. So what happened next felt like a gut punch. In July 2018, seemingly out of nowhere, Disney fired James Gunn from Guardians 3. The reason? Years-old tweets of Gunn's had resurfaced, containing edgy, offensive jokes about sensitive topics. These tweets were unearthed not by outraged moviegoers, but by a group of politically motivated provocateurs aiming to make an example of Gunn in a scenario reminiscent of the Gamergate harassment campaigns. Gunn's tweets were indefensible attempts at shock humor from nearly a decade prior, jokes he had already apologized for. But Disney, wary of any association with such content under its family-friendly image, acted swiftly to remove him. The swiftness of the decision took everyone by surprise, including, reportedly, Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige, who was away at the time and not consulted before the axe fell. For many of us, it felt like a lose-lose situation. Yes, accountability in the age of social media was important, but Gunn had demonstrably grown since those tweets, and firing him seemed, frankly, out of proportion, a knee-jerk reaction to a bad faith campaign. What followed was months of emotional turmoil and loud conversation both in Hollywood and among fans. The Guardians of the Galaxy cast publicly rallied behind Gunn. Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Bradley Cooper, Karen Gillan, Vin Diesel, and especially Dave Bautista, Drax's actor, all voiced support, even penning an open letter urging Disney to reconsider. Bautista, ever the blunt bruiser like his character, went so far as to threaten to quit if Gunn's script wasn't used. An extraordinary stance in an industry where actors seldom challenge studio decisions. As a fan watching this unfold, I felt the pain and confusion. The idea of Guardians 3 without James Gunn's guiding hand was heartbreaking. It was hard to imagine anyone else capturing that quirky magic. Meanwhile, the incident sparked debates about cancel culture, corporate PR optics, and forgiveness. Should an artist be defined by past mistakes if they've shown growth? Did Disney act too hastily, or was it protecting its brand? There were no easy answers, but there was a lot of passion. Then, in a surprise twist worthy of a comic book plot, Disney reversed its decision. In March 2019, after months of deliberation and an apparent change of heart at the highest levels, Disney announced that James Gunn was reinstated as the director of Guardians of the Galaxy Vol. 3. Reports emerged that Walt Disney Studios chairman Alan Horn met with Gunn, was impressed by his sincere apologies and handling of the situation, and quietly decided to bring him back. Marvel Studios, notably, had never hired another director for the project during Gunn's exile, a sign that perhaps Feige and company were secretly holding out hope for Gunn's return. When the news broke of Gunn's rehiring, it felt like justice and redemption. Gunn himself tweeted that he was tremendously grateful to all the people who supported him, and he used the experience as a lesson in humility and forgiveness. In a poetic turn, during his hiatus from Marvel, Gunn had signed on to make a Suicide Squad film for rival DC, showing that talent finds a way to thrive, but he vowed to fulfill his promise to conclude the Guardians story at Marvel too. The James Gunn saga had a profound impact on me. It showed that even a behemoth like Disney could listen to fans and colleagues, weigh context, and reverse a decision, a rarity in showbiz. It also highlighted the fragility of trust between creators and studios in the social media age. For Marvel, it was a trial by fire. Ultimately, Gunn's reinstatement reaffirmed Marvel's image as a place that values its creative minds and is willing to stand by them when circumstances permit. The emotional arc, shock, sorrow, solidarity, and joyous resolution is one I'll never forget. When I watch Guardians Volume 3 now, I see not only a filmmaker's vision on screen, but also the behind-the-scenes story of a family that was broken and put back together. In the grand narrative of Marvel Studios, the James Gunn saga stands as a testament that even giants like Marvel face ethical dilemmas and public scrutiny. But with open dialogue and a bit of heart, they can navigate the storm and emerge with their core ideals intact. Of all the heroes in Marvel's pantheon, Spider-Man has a special place in my heart. And in the larger Marvel saga, his journey to and from the Marvel Cinematic Universe became a drama worthy of its own film. To understand the stakes, let me take you back for a moment. In the early 2000s, long before the MCU existed, Spider-Man was lighting up theaters under Sony Pictures, because Marvel, in its 90s financial desperation, had sold Spidey's film rights to Sony after filing bankruptcy in 1996. Those Sam Raimi-directed Spider-Man films were a huge success, but Marvel Studios had no control or share in that glory. So when Marvel Studios launched the MCU, Spider-Man was notably absent from the Avengers lineup due to that rights issue. For years, fans, myself included, dreamed of seeing Spidey fight alongside Iron Man or Captain America, but it seemed legally impossible. Then a miracle of corporate negotiation happened. In 2015, Sony and Marvel Studios struck an unprecedented partnership deal. Spider-Man could join the MCU, with Marvel's team producing Spider-Man films for Sony and weaving Peter Parker into the Avengers narrative, while Sony retained distribution and profit participation. It was complex, but the bottom line was, Spider-Man was coming home, at least in a shared custody sense. Shortly after, we saw Tom Holland's youthful Spider-Man make a surprise debut in Captain America. Civil War 2016, stealing scenes with just a few minutes of screen time. His wide-eyed, quippy portrayal won over audiences instantly. Finally, Spider-Man was swinging alongside other Marvel heroes where he belonged, and all was right with the world until it wasn't. Flash forward to 2019, a few months after Avengers Endgame. Spider-Man had become an integral part of the MCU, a protege to Tony Stark and a fan favorite. Marvel and Sony's collaboration produced two solo Spidey films, Homecoming in 2017 and Far From Home in 2019, that were both smash hits. Far From Home even became Sony's highest-grossing film ever, topping $1.1 billion worldwide. But just as Spidey was reaching new heights, we were hit with a shocking plot twist, this time in real life. In August 2019, news broke that Sony and Disney's negotiations had collapsed, meaning Spider-Man's future in the MCU was in jeopardy. The reports suggested Marvel, now under Disney, wanted a bigger share of the box office profits from future Spider-Man films, given they were co-producing and adding so much value. Sony balked, and suddenly the deal was off. It felt like your parents announcing a separation after you just had the best family vacation ever. Spider-Man, the beloved child of two studios, was being tugged away from the Marvel family due to business squabbles. The fan reaction was swift and intense. To say we were heartbroken would be an understatement. Social media erupted with trending hashtags like #Save Spider-Man, as millions of fans begged the companies to find a resolution. It was front-page entertainment news. Everyone had an opinion on whether Sony or Disney was the villain in this breakup. Even I found myself irrationally angry at the situation. Hadn't we, the fans, proven how much more fun and profitable it is to have Spidey in the MCU? It seems such a shame for corporate greed to snatch that away. For Marvel Studios, it was an awkward moment. Kevin Feige, when pressed, gave a somewhat bittersweet quote acknowledging that the deal had always been finite and that they were thankful for what they did with Spidey, essentially confirming the split. There was just too much at stake for both sides. Sony had tasted the massive success that came with Marvel's creative input, and Marvel didn't want to lose perhaps the most iconic superhero of all time from its future storylines. Sure enough, after several weeks of fan outcry and reported back-channel discussions, rumors even swirled that Tom Holland himself made personal appeals to the heads of Sony and Disney to reconcile. An announcement came in late September 2019 that felt like a triumphant reunion. Spider-Man was back in the MCU. Sony and Disney reached a new agreement to co-produce a third Spider-Man film, which would become Spider-Man: No Way Home, and even included a clause for Spidey to appear in a future Marvel team-up film. The news felt like the sun breaking through storm clouds. Kevin Feige expressed his excitement with a statement that acknowledged Spider-Man's unique power to cross cinematic universes, teasing that Spidey's dual identity in Sony's films and the MCU could lead to unexpected surprises down the road. This resolution was a huge relief and a cause for celebration. The Spider-Man Tug of War highlighted how even business disputes can become deeply personal to fans when beloved characters are involved. It also demonstrated Marvel Studios' commitment to its fans. They understood how much Spider-Man meant, and they worked to mend that rift. Sony, to its credit, recognized the fan fervor and the value Marvel's expertise brought to the table. The result was a win-win, except perhaps for the executives' pride. And indeed, when Spider-Man: No Way Home hit theaters in 2021, packed with multiversal surprises and nostalgia, it proved to be a blockbuster event that justified all the behind-the-scenes drama. Watching that film in a roaring theater, seeing decades of Spider-Man lore converge, I thought, this is what happens when studios put fans first. The whole saga taught me that in the world of Marvel, no victory comes without a hard fight, and sometimes the heroes wear business suits as much as they do spandex. Marvel's journey to the top has been fueled by its passionate fan base. But every light casts a shadow, and in recent years I've observed a troubling phenomenon: pockets of toxic fandom emerging even around Marvel. As someone who cherishes these stories for their optimism and inclusivity, it's disheartening to confront this darker side. Yet it's an important part of the modern Marvel tale, a reminder that not all battles are fought on screen, and not all villains wear costumes. With Marvel's immense popularity, the fandom grew exponentially, especially online. Most of that fandom is wonderfully positive and creative, but a small yet vocal minority began to lash out in destructive ways whenever the franchise's direction didn't align with their personal expectations, or more often, when Marvel took steps toward greater inclusion. I recall the lead-up to Captain Marvel, 2019, as a particular flashpoint. This was Marvel Studios' first film centered on a female superhero, Carol Danvers. It should have been a universally celebrated milestone. Instead, even before the film was released, a segment of self-proclaimed fans tried to sabotage it. They bombarded Captain Marvel's page on Rotten Tomatoes with negative reviews, despite not having seen the film, spewing complaints that actress Brie Larson was anti-men and that Marvel was forcing feminist politics into their entertainment. In truth, Larson had simply spoken up about wanting more diversity among film critics and expressed feminist views. Hardly outrageous, but enough to inflame this fringe. The vitriol was astounding. It was as if some people couldn't stand the idea of a strong woman taking the lead in a superhero film, despite the genre's themes of empowerment. Marvel and its allies responded. Rotten Tomatoes, in an unprecedented move, changed its policies to prevent trolling campaigns, no longer allowing user reviews before a movie's release. Brie Larson handled the hate with grace, focusing on the significance of her role to young girls and refusing to engage with the trolls' bad faith arguments. When Captain Marvel premiered, it soared to over $1 billion at the box office, a success that soundly drowned out the voices of those who claimed a woman-fronted film couldn't succeed. As I watched the triumph of Captain Marvel, seeing little girls in the theater wearing Captain Marvel t-shirts, it felt like a sweet vindication against the toxic detractors. Sadly, Captain Marvel was not an isolated case. Even the groundbreaking Black Panther, 2018, faced similar ugliness. Black Panther was a cultural earthquake, Marvel's first film with a nearly all-black cast, set in the richly imagined African nation of Wakanda. During its release, it became a celebration of Black excellence and Afrofuturism. But in corners of the internet, trolls tried to undermine it. One group attempted negative ratings for Black Panther, explicitly because the film and its success made them uncomfortable. The notion of a blockbuster superhero movie celebrating Black culture apparently felt threatening to them. They failed spectacularly. Rotten Tomatoes and Facebook shut down those attempts, and Black Panther went on to smash records. Yet it was telling that even this joyous, positive film couldn't escape racist backlash from a toxic fringe. A line from Black Panther's own marketing came to mind: "Wakanda forever." The trolls could try to tear it down, but the legacy of that film was untouchable. Toxic fandom isn't just about review bombing. We've seen instances of harassment directed at actors and filmmakers on social media. Directors like Chloe Zhao, Eternals, and Taika Waititi, Thor Ragnarok and Love and Thunder, have gotten nasty comments when their stylistic choices didn't please everyone. Actors have been harassed for their characters' decisions and storylines, or simply for existing in a diverse cast. It's a bitter irony that stories meant to inspire hope and unity can be hijacked by some to spread hate. I often remind myself that these toxic fans are loud but few. They don't represent the majority of Marvel enthusiasts who are supportive and open-minded. Marvel Studios has generally handled these situations with resilience, sticking by their creative choices, defending their talent, and letting the success of the movies speak for itself. In fact, Marvel's leadership, including Feige, has doubled down on inclusive storytelling despite the noise, recognizing that the franchise must grow with its audience and the times. From my vantage point, the existence of toxic fandom has been a wake-up call that even as Marvel's fictional universe teaches us about unity and acceptance, real-world biases and tensions can intrude. It's made me more appreciative of the true Marvel fans, the ones who embrace the core message that anyone can be a hero. It's also given Marvel an opportunity to take a stand. By not caving to these pressures, Marvel asserts that heroes come in all forms, and if that bothers some people, so be it. Those people will be left behind. The fight against toxic fandom is ongoing, but it's one battle Marvel seems committed to fighting. As a storyteller, it reminds me that every narrative that challenges the status quo will face resistance. But that doesn't mean you stop telling those stories. If anything, it means those stories matter even more. Marvel Studios' ascent has not just been a tale of financial success, but also one of expanding representation on screen. I speak about this with a lot of heart because seeing the Marvel Universe open up to heroes of different backgrounds has been one of the most rewarding chapters of this journey. It wasn't always quick or easy. For the first decade, the MCU's lineup of lead heroes was largely white and male, but the seeds for change were being planted, and when they finally bloomed, the results were nothing short of historic. Let's talk about Black Panther. In 2018, Marvel released what would become a genuine cultural phenomenon. Black Panther was the studio's first film led by a Black superhero, T'Challa, played majestically by Chadwick Boseman, and helmed by a Black director, Ryan Coogler, with a predominantly Black cast and crew. From the stunning Afro-centric costumes and sets, to the powerful themes of identity and responsibility, to the sight of an African hero and African women warriors on screen, it was transcendent. The film wasn't just a hit, it was a movement. It grossed over $1.3 billion worldwide, including an astounding $700 million in the US alone. In fact, Black Panther became the most successful superhero movie ever in the US at that time, surpassing even Avengers Infinity War domestically. Those numbers blew industry analysts away, shattering the long-held myth that films with black leads don't travel or can't be global blockbusters. But beyond dollars, the cultural impact was immeasurable. Black Panther inspired fashion, music, and discourse. It gave Black audiences a grand, empowering vision of themselves in a genre where they'd been largely sidelined. And it gave everyone a hero and a world to admire. Wakanda felt real and aspirational, a symbol of pride. Kids and adults dressing up as T'Challa or Shuri, the phrase "Wakanda forever" echoing joyfully across communities. It was clear that this film had tapped into something deep. Marvel, which once had been cautious about venturing beyond its established formulas, learned definitively that diversity is a strength, creatively and commercially. The triumph of Black Panther paved the way for further milestones. Marvel introduced its first African-American lead in the MCU with Falcon and the Winter Soldier, 2021, on Disney+, passing Captain America's mantle to Sam Wilson, Anthony Mackie. A moment that carried huge symbolic weight in story and in reality. We saw the first Asian lead with Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, 2021, a film that blended martial arts fantasy with heartfelt family drama, celebrating Asian and Asian American culture. Shang-Chi's success further cemented that representation resonates. I recall the pride in seeing a predominantly Asian cast in a Marvel film and the joy it sparked in Asian communities worldwide. Marvel also gave us Eternals, 2021, which, while divisive in reception, featured the most diverse ensemble yet, including the MCU's first deaf superhero, Makari, and first openly gay superhero, Phastos, on screen. And let's not forget Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, 2018, by Sony / Marvel, an animated masterpiece spotlighting Miles Morales, a Black Hispanic Spider-Man, which proved that audiences embrace heroes of any color when given a great story. Each of these milestones was accompanied by an emotional beat in the real world. There were heartfelt stories of people moved to tears, finally seeing a hero who looked like them or shared their heritage. Marvel's actors themselves became ambassadors for inclusion. Chadwick Boseman, Brie Larson, Simu Liu, and others spoke eloquently about what it meant to carry that torch. Of course, as discussed, these strides sometimes drew the ire of a vocal minority, but their negativity was overwhelmingly drowned out by celebration and support. As I guide you through Marvel's story, I can't overstate how meaningful this evolution has been. Marvel Studios, once primarily the realm of straight white male heroes named Chris, is now a place where anyone can be under the mask or behind the shield. That sends a powerful message. Heroism has no single face or background. One sobering yet inspiring moment came with the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman in 2020 to cancer. The world mourned the man who was our T'Challa. Marvel had to navigate not just a creative challenge, how to continue Black Panther's story without its star, but a deep emotional one. In 2022, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever premiered as a moving tribute to Boseman's legacy while introducing a new protector in Shuri. That film, steeped in grief and hope, exemplified Marvel's growth. It wasn't just a superhero flick. It was a story of a community overcoming loss and embracing the future. Diversity in storytelling isn't just about ticking boxes. It's about expanding the emotional palette of the franchise. I look at what Marvel has done, and I'm encouraged to take similar leaps in my own work. Because Marvel's Saga proves that when you open the gates for more people to see themselves as heroes, you don't weaken the mythos. You strengthen it, enrich it, and ensure it endures for generations. April 2019, Avengers Endgame, the culmination of a 22-film saga and over a decade of storytelling. The lights go down, and for the next 3 hours, we collectively laugh, gasp, and cry as Marvel delivers payoff after payoff. When Captain America finally wields Mjolnir, a thunderous cheer erupts. When he utters "Avengers Assemble," leading an army of heroes against Thanos, it's pure catharsis. I'm getting goosebumps even recalling it. And when Tony Stark says that final "I am Iron Man" snap, sacrificing himself to save the universe, there's not a dry eye in the house. Certainly not mine. Endgame felt like the closing chapter of an epic novel, one that my audience and I had lived together. As the credits rolled, applause thundered. Marvel Studios had achieved something unprecedented, an interconnected narrative finale that truly resonated worldwide. Endgame would go on to gross nearly $2.8 billion, briefly becoming the second highest grossing film of all time. And more importantly, it marked the end of an era. Walking out of that theater, emotionally drained yet exhilarated, one question kept nagging at me. What now? How do you follow up the highest of highs? The period after Endgame has been one of soul-searching and new challenges for Marvel Studios, a kind of Phase 4 in more than just name. In many ways, it mirrors a classic hero's journey. After vanquishing the great foe, the hero, Marvel, must find renewed purpose and face the next trials, which are often more insidious. Initially, there was a palpable sense of uncertainty. Key actors who had anchored the saga, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Scarlett Johansson, bowed out of their roles, whether through narrative finality or contracts expiring. Marvel was left without its iconic Iron Man and Captain America at the forefront. The onus was on introducing new heroes and elevating side characters to carry the torch. I was excited to meet the next generation, be it Shang-Chi or the Eternals, or seeing Sam Wilson become the new Cap. But I could sense among the fan community a mix of eagerness and skepticism. Some wondered if the MCU had peaked, if the Infinity Saga was a lightning in a bottle that couldn't be replicated. Behind the scenes, there were more challenges. The visual effects teams were reportedly stretched thin by the breakneck production schedule, leading to public discussions about CGI quality in some projects. Tragedy struck with the loss of actors, Boseman's passing being the deepest cut. And the very ambition of the next saga, the multiverse storyline, was a double-edged sword, full of thrilling possibilities, but also potentially esoteric and confusing, if not executed with precision. I think Marvel realized that after Endgame, they needed to rebuild momentum and goodwill, almost like starting a new novel after finishing a beloved one. In late 2022 and 2023, I noticed Marvel adjusting course, slowing down the release cadence to improve quality, giving more attention to script and post-production, and reassuring fans that the puzzle pieces they were laying about multiverses, new villains like Kang, young Avengers, etc., would pay off in time. And crucially, Marvel has earned a deep well of affection. Fans want to see it succeed and recapture that peak magic. Marvel started as the underdog, bankrupt, outgunned, scoffed at, and they rewrote the rulebook of modern cinema. They survived near collapse, gambled their legacy on a shared universe, navigated corporate mergers, weathered controversies, embraced diversity, and delivered pop culture moments that will be remembered for decades. Post-Endgame is just another challenge to rise to. In many ways, Marvel now is akin to the heroes in Act 2 of their stories, knocked down, a bit bruised, but gathering their strength for a triumphant comeback. The stage is set for a new saga, and I know Marvel is hard at work crafting the next astonishing chapters. Guiding you through this epic saga has felt like reliving a grand film, full of origin stories, setbacks, victories, and growth. Marvel Studios' history, as I've witnessed and recounted it, truly plays out like the journey of a hero. It began in desperation and almost ended before it began, during those bankruptcy days when Marvel's future was hanging by a thread. But like any great protagonist, Marvel found the resolve to fight back, betting everything on an ambitious vision. That bold spirit led to the birth of the MCU, a concept many thought would fail until it succeeded beyond anyone's imagination. We've seen how Kevin Feige's steady hand in a constellation of talent turned a string of movies into a cohesive, modern mythos beloved around the world. We've felt the emotional resonance of moments like Avengers, Endgame, where art and audience met in a once-in-a-lifetime crescendo. Yet Marvel's tale is also a human one of resilience and adaptation. It's not a straight line of triumphs. It's full of bumps, creative disagreements, public controversies, the challenges of success itself. And Marvel has navigated each with a mix of courage and humility. The firing and rehiring of James Gunn taught us that even big studios can correct mistakes. The Spider-Man saga showed that fan voices and smart compromise can win the day. The brush with toxic fandom highlighted the importance of sticking to one's values in the face of negativity. And the strides in diversity demonstrated that opening doors only makes the House of Marvel richer and more welcoming. As I finish this chronicle, I'm struck by how emotional the Marvel journey has been. There were moments of genuine sorrow, the loss of beloved figures like Stan Lee and Chadwick Boseman, for instance, which left indelible marks. And moments of pure joy, the collective roar of an audience when heroes assemble. Marvel Studios has become more than just a film factory. It's part of our cultural fabric, weaving hope, heroism, and even cautionary lessons into our shared experience. Standing here now in 2025, Marvel Studios finds itself at a crossroads with new frontiers to conquer and new lessons to learn. The post-Endgame landscape has tested them, but I see in Marvel the same trait I see in the heroes in their films: the will to keep improving and fighting for what's right. Marvel's story is far from over. In fact, I'd argue a new chapter is only just beginning, one that will be defined by how they evolve in a changing world and continue to earn the love of audiences. And if past is prologue, I have faith they'll find a way to astonish us yet again. After all, this is the studio that turned B-list heroes into global icons, that made us believe a talking raccoon could make us cry, that brought together generations of fans under one big tentpole. They did the impossible before. They can do it again. Marvel Studios has shown that stories matter, that taking risks for those stories can pay off immensely, and that the bond between storyteller and audience is almost sacred. They've built a home for superheroes on screen, yes, but also a home for dreamers and believers off screen. We look up to those heroes because they reflect the best of us, and Marvel, in crafting their tales, has often reflected the best of what Hollywood can be: creative, inclusive, and visionary. It's been an emotionally charged, immersive, and dramatic ride, and I, for one, am grateful to have been on it. The House of Ideas stands tall. The home of our superheroes remains ever-growing. And as Nick Fury might say, Marvel, you've become part of a bigger universe. I can't wait to see where the story goes from here. Wakanda forever, Avengers, assemble, Excelsior. The credits may roll, but the Marvel Studios saga lives on, an inspiring testament that with heart, heroism, and a little bit of that superhero tenacity, anything is possible. And that's how Marvel Studios, just like its heroes, fought against impossible odds, transforming setbacks into triumphs and rising stronger every time. Every story we've explored reminds us that even in the face of incredible challenges, determination and vision can prevail, but every great adventure needs allies. So join our League of Heroes. Smash that like button, share this epic saga with your friends, and subscribe to DarkoX to unlock more thrilling tales from behind the cinematic curtain. Until next time, stay powerful, stay heroic.